The Spanish education system is not overly complex, but for some reason, a lot of people from out of Spain think that it is. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at every single one of the stages, all the way from preschool, primary school, secondary school, the baccalaureate, university, even the vocational training that is very specific to Spanish system. We're also going to be talking about one mistake that a lot of people from abroad make and that is very important to be aware of. Plus, we'll also be talking about the vacation stay in Spain, which is a very interesting topic because we are the country in Europe that has the most vacations for our kids. Now, as in most countries, preschool goes from ages 0 to 6, right before you go to primary school. There is one thing that is a little bit weird about our system, and that is that preschool is divided into two main cycles, from 0 to 3 years old and from 3 to 6 years old. Now, the first one is what you would call nursery. It's very simple. It's as in most countries, it's just nursery. What's funny is that when they talk about first year of preschool, they're actually talking about age 3. Second year of preschool would be age 4, and third year of preschool would be age 6. But preschool as a stage usually starts after the 4th month leave that moms and dads take after having a baby. The second stage is, of course, primary school, which goes from years 6 to 12. And it's divided in two main cycles, first cycle and second cycle. This is what in Spain we would call primaria. So when somebody says, I'm in primero de primaria, that's first year of primary school. Segundo de primaria, tercero de primaria, and so on, until this last year of primaria, which is the 6th year. Now, something that is very unique to primary school is that they only have 174 days of classes. Now, the calendars are very different depending on the different regions, but this would be the number, which is the lowest number in the European Union. The second stage would be secondary school, as the primary school is divided into big cycles. The first cycle would be primero and segundo de la ESO. That's what we call it because ESO stands for Educación Secundaria Obligatoria, which would be a loose translation of education, secondary, and obligatoria, which means mandatory. So whenever somebody is saying segundo de la ESO, they are saying they're in the second course of the first cycle of secondary school. And that would be primero de la ESO, segundo de la ESO, tercero de la ESO, and cuarto de la ESO. We don't really say secondary school that much. We usually just use the term ESO. Now, after secondary school, there are two options, either vocational training, what we'll see in a second, and the baccalaureate. Most people will do the baccalaureate, but the vocational training has a lot of importance to Spain as a country, for many professions depend on the vocational training and not the baccalaureate. A little side note, a lot of people call the vocational training formación profesional. Translation to the English would be professional training, but we call it usually FP. But let's start with the baccalaureate. Now, the baccalaureate are the 2 years after secondary school, and they're 2 years that will precede going to university in a lot of cases. Now, there are 5 types of baccalaureates, although this does change a lot depending on the government because education laws in Spain change quite often. Right now, there are 5 of them. The Science and Technology Baccalaureate, there's the Social Sciences Baccalaureate, there are 2 baccalaureates of arts, and then there's the General Baccalaureate. But I think the last change happened in 2020, so make sure that you check because this could change very, very soon. After the baccalaureate, you could go to university. But before we get into how to get to university through the Evau, which is the test that you have to take in order to go to university, let's take a closer look at the vocational training. Because when you are talking about vocational training, the FP, there are 3 types of FP that you need to know about. The first one would be the básica, or the basic formación profesional, the basic vocational training. That is taught for the people who didn't finish secondary school. Now, secondary school in Spain is mandatory. You have to finish cuarto de la ESO, And with that, you get your título de graduado en secundaria. But, just in case someone couldn't finish it, but they started tercero de la ESO, at least they have a chance to go back into the system through the FP Básica, which is fantastic because it helps a lot of people come out of a failure at their school. The second type, which is a lot more common, is the FP de grado medio, or the medium FP. Now, this is an alternative to a lot of people who don't want to study a baccalaureate, but they still want to continue their professional training. Now, doing an FP de grado medio, you're still studying, it's still 2 years, but we could say that the FP focuses a little bit more into the real applications of a job, whereas the baccalaureate focuses on going to university. Now, if you decide to do the FP media, you can always go to the FP superior, which does have access to the university. So in reality, you could go to university not through the baccalaureate, but by doing an FP media, which is 2 years, then a formación profesional superior, and from here you could go straight to university. Now, formación profesional superior is the next level of vocational training and the last level of vocational training, which you can access directly from the medium. A lot of people use this route to go to university. It's perfectly valid, and even some people say that it's better than the regular one. Although, of course, it does take longer because you take 2 years of the media and then another 2 years of the superior before you can land the university. So just bear in mind that when people talk about the FP or formación profesional, there are 3 different levels and they're quite different from one another. Just bear that in mind. Now, most people are going to do the baccalaureate. In order for them to access university, they have to take the Evau, Evaluación de Acceso para la Universidad, which is an exam that everybody takes. Now, this is where the weird part begins, and a little math, so bear with me because it does make a lot of sense. In order to know what grade you need to get into a public university, you have to do a little math. First, you have to take into account the baccalaureate. You need to have passed the baccalaureate in order to be able to access the Evau. But say you have a 5 out of 10, which means that you've passed the baccalaureate. 60% of your final grade is going to depend on your grade of the baccalaureate. So if you had a 10, 60% of that 10 would be 6 points. You could get up to 6 points from the baccalaureate. You then take the exámenes generales of the Evau, and those exams are 40% of the grade. So if you have a 10, you could earn up to 4 points. So you could have 6 points from the baccalaureate and 4 points from the Evau. That's a 10. But this is where the weird stuff comes, and that is that you could have up to a 14. Now, how can you gain those extra 4 points? Well, students can take what they're called the específicas, which are certain exams that will account for up to 2 points in some colleges. So say, for example, that you're applying to study medicine in Barcelona. The University of Barcelona says the people who come with the específicas of chemistry and biology, I'm going to value those more because I think those are very important to studying medicine. Now, because they're saying that those are very important, if you take those exams and you have a 10 in both, you can multiply then those grades times 0.2, which means that you get 2 points for chemistry and 2 points for biology, adding up to the 10 points that you got, 6 from the baccalaureate and 4 from the general exams of the Evau. You have 6 plus 4 plus another 4. But let me get one thing clear. You're getting those 4 points because the University of Barcelona College of Medicine is saying that they value those 2 específicas that you took in order to access that particular degree, which makes actually a lot of sense because they would value chemistry and biology over other subjects. But say that you are applying to a college in Madrid of architecture. Now, they might not value chemistry and biology as much as the University of Barcelona College of Medicine. In that case, what would happen is that instead of multiplying the grade that you had in those 2 específicas times 0.2, you would multiply it times 0.1. Thus having a 12 instead of a 14. And that concludes the Evau. After the Evau, most people are going to go to university, and the way it works is that you're going to apply to multiple places that you want to go with the grade that you took, which is going to range from 0 to 14 depending on the college you're applying to, as we just explained. Now, you need to have a grade higher than the nota de corte in order to get in. So if a university in Madrid to study medicine has a 13, you need a 13 or higher in order to get in. Once you're in, you get to the whole beautiful world of university, which is very, very similar to what you guys have probably experienced back home if you are from the European Union. Because since 1999 that the Bologna Plan started, up to 47 countries have exactly the same system, which is called the Espacio Europeo de Educación Superior, or in English, the European Higher Education Area, which is going to basically unify the systems of a lot of countries. So you're going to be familiar with this. We have 3 different levels at university: the grado, master, and PhD. In order to complete each of these, you're going to need to finish what are called ECTS, which account for basically 25 to 30 hours of work, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. In order to get a grado, you need 240 ECTS. Master's degree are going to be between 60 in 1 year or 120 in 2 years. Now, this is something that you have to be aware of and that I warned you at the beginning of the video. And that is that some masters are going to be called masters, but are not official. So whenever you're going to apply to masters, make sure that it fits in the EEES. If it doesn't, you should probably consider other masters unless you know for sure that that master's is good enough for you. Once you've taken a master, you can also have access to a PhD, which has 2 big cycles. The first one is 60 ECTS, which a lot of people convalidate with the masters. And the second one is, of course, the thesis, when you will become an expert in one very specific particular subject. And with that, we conclude the university. As you've seen, all the stages are pretty straightforward. I've oversimplified it a little bit, so if you want more information, you can find it in the blog post that we wrote about this system. We also have another post that answers one particular query, which is if the Spanish education is free or not. And I'd like to explain that just a little bit more, because the only part of the Spanish education that's strictly mandatory is primary school and secondary school. But is it free? Spanish education is free, but that does not mean that a lot of Spaniards don't pay for their education. Now, there are 3 different types of school: the public school, the private school, and the concertado. First, the public schools are, of course, public, and thus they are free. You do have to pay a little bit of money for books and other things, but they're mainly free. Private schools, on the other hand, are completely private. Parents have to pay the whole tuition, no questions asked. And the last type, it's the concertados, which means that parents pay a little bit of money, but the state or the comunidades autónomas also help participate in that burden. So it's paid for by the parents and by the state. And you can find schools that are concertados basically all over Spain. Now, this that I've described is just for Spanish. People from the European Union and people from outside of the European Union have a different status. So if you want to learn more about that, be sure to check out our blog post. Cheers.